Hello and welcome to today's topic of no. I should be like more energetic, like, oh my god, guys, check it out. We're gonna go over PropTypes.any. Holy crap, everything's gonna be amazing. Maybe. I might just keep it. I don't know. Might be worth it. Okay, well let's just keep it and see how it works, because I'm not gonna edit this. So if I don't keep it now, it's in. Alright, so I'm gonna cut the mic and switch the scene. There. Okay. Yes, here we are. So, PropTypes.any, right? Types.any. Oh my god, it didn't keep the JavaScript thing. Let's do this. So, this thing, right? You guys know about this? People don't like this. I don't like it either, actually. But I'm going to make a case for it anyway, because I actually do think there's a case for it. So, let's say we have a parent component. It's funny, I just did this at work today, and I was already planning to make the video, and then I used them as my guinea pigs. So, now I've already done this once. So we're going to have like a text prop on this parent. Okay, we're also gonna have an href because the parent is. I'm gonna make it even more complex for your guys' example. We have a parent component. Okay, this parent component is just gonna pass props into the child, and this is also not coming up. Child component. Oh, it's spelled wrong. Okay, and this child component, we're going to pass it these props. It's gonna take the exact same props as the parents. And you probably already see where I'm coming from, but I'm not there yet. And I would love to see the arguments against this, because I don't want to use PropTypes.any. But we'll get there. We'll get there. So let's write these out like actual files. You don't need to define React in context anymore with React 17, so I'm not going to. And then this one's going to be export default parent component, even though we won't be doing anything with it. Okay, so we're essentially building two components right now, like you would in a normal app. And this parent component, gosh, it's got to take some kind of prop, right? I don't know what prop it should take, though. Let's have the child not care about text. How about that? It actually doesn't need to care about text. Let's try to figure out a better way to do this, because I did do it at work, but I don't want to use the same exact example, because I noticed some issues with it. All right, well, let's do this right now. So we're going to choose to render a child component based on the existence of an href. So do I care if this href is a Boolean? No, I just care if it's there or not. So it needs to be truthy or falsy. That's all I care. And all values in JavaScript can be either truthy or falsy, unless I'm wrong. Ooh. You know what we should do? Let's I'm gonna load up an about blank. Man, this video, I seriously thought it was gonna be like 20 minutes. Maybe it will be. All right, can you guys see this console window? No. So here. Okay, so we're gonna check if some values are truthy. So Boolean. You wrap them in Boolean to see if they're truthy. Okay, that is truthy or falsy. I mean, they have to be, right? If you pass something to Boolean, it's either gonna be true or false. Most values are gonna be false. Infinity is true. Okay, negative infinity is true. Interesting, because these are all values. This is not a value. I guess that's why it's false. That makes sense. There's some other weird things with this, but yeah, all values have to be either true or false when you're doing a truthy thing. And they're going to be true or false because when you put something at the top, a condition at the top of a ternary, which we haven't built yet, then it has to be true or false. So we'll just return null if it's not there. And you normally don't have to return null, except your component has to return something. It can't return undefined, or else React doesn't like you anymore, and it's not going to be your friend, okay? So you obviously want React to be your friend. Like, last time I returned undefined, Dan Abramov, he actually came to my... I don't think this joke is going to go anywhere. He came to my house, and he told me it was wrong. Like, that's not funny. It's not funny. Let's not go with that joke. It's awful. Awful. Oh, man. What a great start. Okay. So this is the right here. I don't even care what this does, but like I guess we can make an anchor tag. Right? Like, why not? And does it take any other props? No, it's just text, right? So this text is children. Now text should be children. It's okay. We'll go over. This is bad design, but we're getting there. So let's define some prop types, right? Equals, and we would import them normally, right? So that's not right. It's this. I don't know what happened there. That was weird. I mean, what was weird was that I didn't do it right. So in here, we're going to have href and text, and they're going to be equal to Thank you. They're going to be equal to PropTypes.string because this component, that's all it really cares about. Now, what happens that's fun is going to be over here. But let's do it like most people would do it in their apps. And then I'm going to tell you, you guys are like awful, and why are you doing this to people? It's the worst thing you could do. Okay, so let's do one of these and copy it for the other side. I really, you know, this presentation went a lot quicker earlier today. I feel like I'm just having a lot more fun with it now. I don't know why. So you can't see the bottom. Do you need to see the export? If you need to see this export stuff, there, it's gone. Okay. So we have, this is how you would set it up in your app. You're like, my parent component takes these props and I got to pass them to my child component. So my parent component is going to care that these are strings, but it doesn't. Okay. This component here, parent component, does not give a crap. It doesn't care what these are. These could be PropTypes.any, right? This is my argument here. I'll get to a better argument and I'll go through more things, but it's like, it doesn't care what these are, it just passes them to the child. The child is the one that really should err. If these aren't strings, the child component needs to err and be like, hey, you didn't pass strings. It's your fault. Now, the problem is like, what do you, if you put any here, what happens if you're in TypeScript, okay? And I'm going to do it over here. So this is the TypeScript side, even though it's not TypeScript. And you do one of these, right? And you do something like this. What happens? Is it going to error? I don't know. And now TypeScript can still use prop types. Prop types are runtime. TypeScript is compile time. So it's prior to runtime. So if you actually have any errors in your code, TypeScript wouldn't find it. You still have to do runtime fixes in JavaScript, as far as I know. Now, there are ways around that. I have heard, but I have not seen anything because I don't personally work with TypeScript. So I don't know if this will break. What it should do is say, this component doesn't care about that prop, but the child component that is rendering it does care about that prop, or that it passes that to does care about that prop. It should be smart enough to do that, but I really don't think it is. So when you're hearing me talk about this stuff, pretend that there's no TypeScript involved, because I really don't know what happens in that library. There are ways around making this work in prop types. So a way to make this work differently would be that you would import at the top of your file, actually underneath your global imports, you would import child component from child component, and we need the prop types off it, right? So we would do .proptypes href and text like that. So this would work too, right? Except, what if we memoize this component? Yeah. So I'm gonna make it even more interesting. This is way better than, well, I don't know. You might not like this better. From React, okay. I'm alphabetizing these based on the first letter here. That's my ESLint rules typically do that. So the way you do it now is that the memoized version does not work with prop types, just so you know. So it doesn't. Well, we'll get there. It's a memoized child component. I don't know why the React people don't do that, but I've talked about it in a different video where I was like, they hate us, and it's not really that. There's other reasons, but if we memoize it, which I would do, then what ends up happening is you can't do this, okay? You have to do .type, .proptypes. So I don't care if child component is memoized or not. And so I don't want to have to do this. And I was like, well, why would they do this? And even if I did like this prop types here, I think it doesn't work right. I think you don't get prop types off it. You can't, even if you attach the prop types to the memoized one, or you have to attach them to both. It might be something weird like this. Now, I'm not going to test it right now because I was just going to do a quick presentation, didn't expect it to be this long. But maybe you have to do this, right? But this is still awful. Who wants to do that? So this is one way around it, but now you have to know that the freaking component's memoized. That you have to put this .type here to get the actual component itself to get the prop types off it, which is awful, right? You don't want to have to do that. Also, this tightly couples this component's prop types to this component. I don't care. In parent component, I really don't care. I don't care if it's this prop type or what. The only reason you would do this is so that the parent component errors with these things. Or if you're like exporting this component in a component library, then you know what the props are, right? Because you got to pass props to it somehow. If they have PropTypes.any, which is the proper way of doing this, and I really do mean that, even though I don't like it, it's the proper way of doing it, that this has a PropTypes.any, you won't know what to pass in. You're like looking at a component library and you're like, I don't, what am I supposed to pass in here? It's like, well, the child component takes href and text. It's like, yeah, but I don't care what the child component is. It's right. Like what this, I don't even know that this is rendering, right? I'm just importing parent component, right? So there are ways to fix this, but I'm just kind of showing an example of, this is a very simple example on how to do this, where you're going to render something And the parent component even cares about href. It really does. But it just cares if it's there or not. So it can be any value. So it's kind of interesting, right? So it passes both of these through, but it even cares about this value, but it just cares that it exists or not. Otherwise, it doesn't care about anything. And you could do something like this. How about this, right? Or rest or child component props, which is maybe what I would do to be like very clear that that's what this is. And you could do the href, right? You're pulling it off, and then you got to do ... child component props. Now, the fact that like this is confusing. It should just it's really confusing. Another way to do it would be to just simply say, there are no props in here, right? But this component does have props and does care about props. But let's just do it like this. Let's say we do props just like that. I've seen this before. I don't like this pattern, but there's this pattern, right? And you can just do ... props here, and then you don't have the href piece that you got to pass in twice. So this is another one. And then at this point, this is all your props types would be, just this href. And now you can be like, well, I care that it's a string. Problem solved. There's just one little thing, and I do care. No, you don't. You don't care it's a string. You just care that it exists. So don't make it a string. Sometimes you'll see something like this too. You know, or maybe like this component requires it and this component doesn't. You want them to be exactly the same, or at least, you know, because I really don't care about what it is. I just care if it exists. Any, which is actually correct for this component. It's correct that this prop type comes in this way. Hopefully I've convinced people. I don't know, but hopefully that convinces you. There's way more. We're going to go into more here. So this video is going to be longer than I expected, but I think it's worth it. And we're already at, 11 minutes? I thought it was going to be 20 minutes, so we're good. We're good. So this is obviously another way you can do it, but now I don't know what this is, and I don't know what I'm passing to child component. I'm now going to have to go into child component and see all the props in here and see what the heck to bring out, right? If I ever make any modifications or somebody passes stuff to parent, I actually have no clue what it's passing into child component, especially when this props list becomes much longer. So that's not good either, but it's something. Right? If I don't care what the props are, I don't care. I don't like the ... props in general because it's when you come into a project that you've never seen before, which has happened to me a lot, especially even at work. I get very confused when I see ... props or ... something, right? Because I have no clue what that is. I don't know what's in that object. I have to like debug it manually and go in put some breakpoints and figure it out. Like, that doesn't tell me every single instance or every single case that is being passed in there. So I have to guess a lot of the time. And I don't like to guess what's being put in or what's not. I want to know that my code changes will not break anything. So being explicit like this is better, even though it kind of seems like, like why do I have to know what props I'm passing in here? Exactly. You're right. You're right. You shouldn't have to know. And so what we should do is prefer composition over wrapping like this. So there are a few ways we could solve this. Okay. The way I would solve this today, if I was doing this, there are sometimes you cannot solve this. Okay, sometimes like this is a component from a different library. There's not really any way to solve it. You essentially have to pass props through. If that's the case, then you can do what I did before, where you like do child component dot prop type whatever, or you could just put any, and that's literally the correct answer. There are other ways you could do it where your component just doesn't take any props and just ... props them in. So these cases like where you can't control this component, it kind of sucks, right? Like there's no way around it. There are other ways though to solve this if you do have control. If I have control over child component, there's another way. So the way I would do it, and this is wrong anyway. This code these should have been implicit return. Okay, well let's fix that. It's not implicit return, but I'm fixing it because I'm going to add some stuff up here. So what if let's do that. What if you had no, you don't do it that way. This really still is implicit return. Okay, fine. It's implicit return. I just had it wrong the whole time. This component is the one that changes. And this is wrong too. Okay. Look at this. So we're going to do use context here. And we're going to pull the component context. Component context. It's so generic. And this is the component context. I usually deconstruct off of here. Oh man. All right. So I usually deconstruct off of here, but right now we don't know what they are. But I can exactly like guarantee you what they are. They're going to be these two. So the thing is, then this component takes no props and it only pulls things from context. And you're saying, well, I don't know that those no, like it doesn't matter. It's coming from context. You can look at whatever the provider is for this context and know that it's passing that. And then down here you would pass nothing, right? Which it kind of is like, wow, I wouldn't expect that, but okay. And then you have to have a provider component. So I would wrap this in I called it component context.provider. Like this. It does take a value prop. I'm going to drop it down only because we don't have any room. And sometimes I do that too, just depending on how I'm feeling. It's like, I think components or just HTML in general does not look as good when you drop down only a single prop versus like multiple. But I found over time that I'm starting to be able to read this single prop drop a lot easier than, having the prop like way over here on the side, like hiding off the screen. And I know right now it's like super zoomed in, but I don't like, it's like, even if I'm on GitHub or I'm just like really quickly trying to skim something, it's easier if it's dropped down. This really sucks. So the thing is, this would be an object here. And hopefully somebody's screaming at the mic. If you're not screaming at the screen right now at this not being memoized, that's a problem. I would say that. It doesn't necessarily mean it is, but let's write this correctly. So this is going to be component context value. No, component provider value. Component context provider value. Gosh, that sucks. You could just call it provider value there, because it's the only one in this component. Okay, so let's fix this real quick. Again, for a second time. Let's fix that. Okay, so what I'm talking about is that you need to use memo that value. Otherwise, it will be recreated every single time. It's an object, obviously, and I don't want to recreate an object every time and cause my memoized component down here to re-render every time this parent component gets any kind of update. Any update. That, well, if the parent component is memoized, it would prevent that. But it's not at this point. Oops, sorry. It's not memoized, even though it should be. So let's also memoize it. And some people are saying, you don't have to memoize every time. It's like, yeah, but I don't know. It's not worth it. It's not worth trying to fix this in the future. It's really not. It's much more worth it to memoize everything and just know it's going to work than to have to deal with it in the future. Also, memoizing everything in a component makes it significantly easier to use hooks. Hooks just suck in general, but it does make it easier to use hooks in a lot of ways because hooks rely on listening for values to change. If you're passing an object in the second arg, it re-renders it causes this thing to update every single time, which you can get infinite loops that way. So, I mean, you don't want this to update every single time, right? You only want it to update when these values update. But if these values are dynamically generated, then anytime an update comes through, it causes these to update, which causes them to update, which causes them to update. I mean, there's like problems there. So this does depend on href and text. And I know this looks like obtuse. Like, why are you doing all this stuff? Because it won't force this context to update. Every single thing that listens, every single thing that has this use context with that component context will fire a render update. No matter memoization or anything, it will fire an update anytime this updates. So if we memoize this value, we can prevent like 20 or 30 other components potentially in our application from updating when they shouldn't be. Just by doing that. Just by putting a little use memo here. When they shouldn't be. I'm going to be very clear about that. If now there's some other things you can do for like super performance optimization that there's only ever one value coming out of a context. I never do that because usually values are related and you need multiple of them. It just makes more sense to do it this way. But you can at least calm the fact that like everything updates that way. There are other ways around this by like doing observables, and I'm not talking about RxJS specifically, just a function that has a publish in a subscribe method, and you can have those come off of your context, and your context never updates. It just gets, I mean, when you listen to it, you can get it, and it's just there that one time, and you have to subscribe to that in a use effect, the thing that's coming out of your context. That's how the observable pattern works. You don't have to worry about that here. I'm not going into that. So we make a use memo. We're not done yet, right? So this is the provider value. And there. So this is our provider value. We're passing it here through a context. I know this is a lot. Yes, it is a lot. This is a small example. I don't have production code to show you right now. I just wrote it like this before today too. I was expecting this to be much quicker. This is like the fifth time I said that. So basically, based on an href value, we're blah, 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 blah. But this one now is not PropTypes.any, it's PropType string. Child component no longer has PropTypes because it doesn't have props. It gets all its props through context. And so this is another way to do it. I'm not saying this is the solution or this is always the best way. I found I've started to do stuff like this more often because it makes sense for the situations I'm doing it in. It doesn't make sense here. But it makes sense in the situations I'm doing them in that I'm passing things through context. Usually I have like a parent component that wraps a list of items, and I don't necessarily know what the list of items are, but I know that they may or may not need the context at any point in the render tree. I'm moving my hands and you can't see it. So at any point in a render tree, where you have like something like I don't know why I'm hitting the spacebar every time. Well, I'll just keep doing it to be consistent. So if something up here, and I render it down here, I still want it to have the data, and I don't want to have to pass props through these two spots. So I will use context to get it down here. A lot. I even do this. Sometimes I do context like this. Like I said, I'll have a list and I'll have an item here, and I don't know what this item is, and I don't even want to be responsible for passing props to it because I don't know what props it cares about. So I'm just going to do that. There are other ways I could do it where, like when I'm looping, I'm doing clone element or create element, and there were ways around it, but context is like a simpler way of doing it. The problem is, like I said, context has some not security. It has performance issues, and you have to be aware of those for your application for your specific needs. In the case of this, I'm going to memoize this because this is a memoized component. Therefore, I don't want it to re-render at random times when it shouldn't be, because I literally memoized it. If I didn't memoize it, then it wouldn't matter because it's going to do that anyway. But in this case, it's memoized. Therefore, this needs to be memoized. So if you just consistent in your whole application, you memoize everything, you won't have this problem. Let me tell you, it is not easy to fix this. I guarantee you will never fix this if you don't memoize everything. If you have any performance problems from not memoizing, you will never fix those issues. You have to rewrite the entire application or refactor the entire application to work with memoization to make that work. And you have to start at the edge nodes and you have to move all the way into the top stuff. It's very difficult to do. I've done it, and I've never completed it. Because there's other projects and things we got to work on and things to do. And so you can make like little headways here and there, to fix things. And it just up the chain, something's going to pass a non-memoized value, and it's eventually going to hit your child component, and it's going to cause everything down below it to re-render, which causes massive performance spikes. So especially when you're not using concurrent mode. Not everything is compatible with concurrent mode today. I think like React Route or Redux. Yeah, React Router now is compatible, but React Redux is not compatible, or maybe it is today, but it wasn't like 6 months ago. So that's another example of something that is not compatible with concurrent mode. So you can't get this so when like things are rendering, you only have a single thread essentially to render in. When you use something called concurrent mode, which is new, it's like a newer React technology since version 16, that allows you to render your app in portions at different times and cancel previous renders if they're taking too long and you got a new update came in, stuff like that. And it gives you you can have low priority and high priority updates. I mean, if you use that, that's great. It's really good. It's really good. It's almost like multi-threading your render, your application's render. But if you don't have that, which I guarantee you 99% applications, I don't really know. These days, I don't know. Maybe Next has it built in. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure most React applications don't use concurrent mode. So you're not going to get a benefit from it. So you really need to keep these things in mind. And even if you have it, you're just trying to patch something in to fix the performance problems that you created yourself. It doesn't fix the performance problems. It just makes them less of a problem. So this is, this whole thing with the memoization hooks and all this is also because Svelte does this stuff under the hood. It's built into the I want to say language, but it's not really a language. But you do write Svelte code, and then there is a compiler that essentially generates JavaScript or transpiler or whatever you want to call it that changes your code into something else, and that's what runs in JavaScript. So it looks like JavaScript that you're writing, and you use the equal sign actually like this, but behind the scenes it's doing an observable and basically saying when this value updates, call a function and pass that value into the function and not force the whole component to update, re-render that one little piece of the DOM or any pieces of the DOM here that are using that value. So it's very smart about that, and that's why it's so fast. So you have, if you want to get that kind of Svelte speed, this is how you do it. It's a lot of work in React, but I don't think it's a lot of work if you just get in the habit of doing it and you do it from the start. All your applications will be performant. You don't have to worry about stuff. I've heard people say there's a cost to this memoization. I don't think there's a cost to this memoization, and none of this has to do with PropTypes.any. But I'm trying to get into this because I wanted to talk about it anyway. So maybe I should name the video memoization, memoize all the things, right? But it has nothing to do with that. That could be a separate video, or I could just cut this, cut it at the point while I'm talking, and just cut it, and then make another video and be memoize all the things, but then people don't know the context because it's just all of a sudden there's code on the screen. I'm talking about stuff I don't know. So I'm just going to leave the video like it is. Okay, so the point of this is that the parent now has prop types, and people know exactly what to pass in and what type they must be, but the child component does not have prop types and doesn't really care, because all it does is render those things. But actually, what's funny is the child is the one that actually cares about the prop types, not the parent. The parent actually does not care still about these prop types, but it needs them. It needs them because it needs you to pass these certain things in, otherwise the children will break. So this is what's important here, is that the parent is passing props, essentially, through context into the child. And the child is actually, yes, it is listening to that context and it is getting those values. And there's a contract between the parent and the child to have props come in with these certain types on it. That's why this needs to be in the parent, is because there's a contract between the parent and the child that these have to be strings. If they're not strings, it will break the children. So even though the parent technically doesn't care about these, it does care about them because it is the one. It is the one. Man, there's a word I can't think of. It's initiating the contract. I don't know. It's the one that's like, hey, this is the contract, and the child component is going to expect that contract to be sound. That's probably not the word either. Upheld. I have no clue. All right, so that's what I'm talking about here. And so this is another way to do it. And it's like, man, this code ballooned, right? You could just pass the props and be done with it and put, hey, if you're fine with PropTypes.any, there you go. So this is another way to do it. Now we can talk about composition, right? I had talked about this before. The composition means that I export this and I export this with my component library. So basically from here, all I do is I render children and I don't care what's in here. Something else can deal with it. I don't even care about the href, maybe, right? Maybe that's not something I care about. Maybe it's something else. You know, maybe somebody else puts that in there, like they shouldn't render this parent if there's no href. Why is that my responsibility as a parent component? Like, why does that make any sense? You know, like somebody else should be telling me if I should render or not. That's not something I care about. What I care about is, let's just implicitly return this at this point because we don't have anything else. Oh, we still have a provider value? Yeah, but we're not taking props now, are we? We're still taking props. Okay, we're still taking props. Fine. Is there anything I deleted that I should have kept? No. I needed this. I need this. But there's no if else anymore. I guess that's a way to do it. So like somebody else does the if else outside of it. This doesn't work for every situation, but the point of composition I'm saying is like this takes children now, which we don't have up here. And children will be PropTypes.node, which is the standard that you would use. And technically it's required. And I don't know a case where you wouldn't pass it in. So I'm going to put it as required. Because you can clone elements, is required is not always the right thing to be putting on there, on your components. It doesn't always make sense. In this case, it literally has to have children. But it doesn't have to have children. Yeah, but I mean, the whole point of this is that it has children. These things could not exist. That's fine. But you have to have children. Otherwise, this thing won't render. And I'm surprised that children is not like red underlined or something, because I don't have it in here. That's weird. Maybe because, I don't have ESLint rules. Because this is an untitled, like, just random file. And it's not in a project. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I really depend on those rules. But we do need children. I mean, there's absolutely no way. Let's say, like, even if we're cloning this, you would still have children in there. I guess I could pass children. No, there's not going to be a situation where I pass children during a clone or anything. So this is correct. This is a safe way to do it, I think. So now what would happen is some other component now has to go like parent component. And you don't always want to do this. Like sometimes this is more work than it's worth. If it becomes hard to write, hang on. If it becomes hard to use your component, people don't want to do it. And if you have to use it a certain way, it's honestly kind of sucky too. So like this is one way, but oh yeah, I said we don't need the context, right? Like at this point, we don't need context. Maybe this has some kind of like div on it with classes and styles and stuff. At this point, it's just a div though. There's nothing in there because I don't know what goes in here. Well, at this point, we can implicit return too. Okay, there we go. So it renders children, right? And child component now takes href and text. Like this. This is the way that I would expect to see it. It really depends on a lot of things, though. Obviously, parent component is not doing anything here, but I'm showing you all these examples, and none of them are real-life examples yet, except for like the prop types piece. But basically, now all you have to worry about here is children, and this has to now worry about prop types again. But the prop types are right here, and you don't have duplicate prop types ever. That's what's important about all this, is there are no duplicate prop types. It's a big deal to me that there aren't any duplicate prop types, because it makes it easier to like decouple your code and not worry about things. Like this and this are decoupled right now. Yes, this says render children, but it doesn't know what they are. So at this point, they're decoupled. And you can do a lot more with this now, because maybe I swap out parent component with something else, and now I can render child component a different parent, and it doesn't matter. Even if there's context, then the other parent component can have its own context. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. Like, for instance, this parent component could come with styles for like a wide screen or a desktop view, as people would say, right? And this child component could be something that basically renders differently based on if it's given a size. And there could be another parent component that is that has the same context, but it's passing like a mobile or like a narrow view of that same content, or the size that you would put for the narrow view. And then the child component would just respond to it from listening to context. So you can swap out even that thing. This composability is very important. I think it's the like proper way to do React components, because we have components. You're supposed to compose them together. That's all about like functional programming and how this works. Now, the thing is, I don't know if like every situation is going to be different. It might be just simpler to put duplicate props. I would never recommend that. But, bringing them in from the child, tightly coupling two components, it's a possibility. I don't know if it's the best way to do it anymore, but that's how I've done it in the past. And then the thing I'm talking about today is PropTypes.any. I hope this has been a pretty good example of why you might want to use PropTypes.any, because you should look at this component and what it cares about. And if it does not care about those things, PropTypes.any. Now, okay, let's get a little bit more in detail here. You can also use PropTypes.object. I've seen this denied in certain ESLint rules, and that sucks because it sucks because there's an alternative that you can literally do this to get around this ESLint rule. So I wouldn't deny this in your ESLint rule in the first place, because you could do that, problem solved. But the other reason this should be a pink color too. Is there? Yeah, see, it should be that. Okay, whatever that is. That's not pink. That's like salmon. I don't know why it's blue here. Do I have to like? I don't know. That's weird. Okay. Now it's light blue. Okay, so the reason object is important is you might have the same situation. Like, I care this is an object because I'm doing a dot something, I might be dotting it, or I don't know. There might be something that you actually care that it's an object, but other than that, you don't care about anything, right? I just care that a prop is coming in, it is an object. And the only reason you care about an object is usually if it has a shape, because you care about something with it. But there might be other reasons you care if it's an object. There are properties on objects in the prototype that you can only do on objects, and you can't do on certain things like strings or numbers. And so that's where PropTypes.object would come in. It's rare versus like PropTypes.any, which I feel like would make more sense to use. PropTypes.object could still matter. And then in a different component, it would care about shape, okay? That component's going to care about shape, or it might not care about shape at all. If you're doing this correctly, then it would just care about props. And you would have specifically defined props going into your component. And you wouldn't have to like have a shape or something like that. But sometimes you get the data and, it comes in with a shape. Maybe the first component at the top level has the shape, and then it kind of like normalizes that data and then throws it out to everybody. I don't know. This is a possibility to use. PropTypes.any I hate this. I really don't like it, but it has, and I only don't like it because I've been taught not to like it. I want to be very clear about that. It's not like I don't like it because any specific reason, or I've ever run into a problem with it. I've never used this my entire life, but I have thought about it, and I was like, there's a reason for this. Honestly, I don't even know if this exists. Now that I think about it, does that exist? I know it exists in TypeScript. Yeah, is that like a thing? Why is this all really bright white? Oh, I changed my theme before the video, and now everything's really white, and it's actually like blinding me. I kind of wish I had my dark theme back. Okay, well, I'll have to fix that. I thought the brown looked cool, but then, okay. So here are all the prop types. I don't know what these optionals are. I think, prop types at array. Okay, oh, there we go. Cool. It's just the prop types without the .is required piece. So do you have any? Yes. Oh, good. I had a whole video on this. I even had to talk at work on it, and I forgot that if this was even here. Okay, it is. That's great. I'm going to leave it in the video, even though it makes me look bad, because sometimes you forget things. And if I made the whole video and I was wrong, I would just be like, okay, use PropTypes unknown value or whatever, they ended up naming it. I was pretty sure this was in here, but there we go. Okay. These are all the prop types. If you didn't know, you can find them. They're on this page. It looks awful. Like, this is not a really good page of documentation. It's just like, what's this mean? I have no clue. You don't use optional array in your code. Why they're putting optional arrays, that would be the prop that comes into your component. It's called optional array. I didn't really think about that until just now, that this is like a prop types definition. It's actually really confusing. But there you go. So that's something you would use. And object of. This is a good way to do it. That's interesting. Object with property values of a certain type. Object of prop types number. Why isn't it just prop types number? How would you have an object with the prop types? Did you do one of these? Like new number 1 and then like you extended it or something? Or no. The way you would extend it is like this. You do like class my number extends number, something like that. Did you do this? Is that what object of number would be? Why would object of prop types number? Like, did you do something like this and then like now you're doing new my number? Like, what is this? I don't know. Now somebody's probably gonna comment like, hey, I've done that before. It's like, okay, I'd never seen this before. I'd never thought about even doing that. It sounds kind of weird to me. Maybe something, the places you would do this is like polyfills. That's my assumption. But you would do something like this, and then obviously this would break. So you can't polyfill that way. The only way you'd polyfill is like you edit the prototype like this, or actually prototype, or this, which is deprecated. And I don't know a good alternative right now. But I mean, you do something like this, and you do dot blah equals blah, So I don't know. I mean, that's how you would do a polyfill. Oh, the other way you can do a polyfill is you create the number class directly. Ooh. How did that even happen? Okay. Great. I'm gonna have to edit the video, aren't I? All right, so you could do something like this and define what this number is. Or if you're like an old JavaScript, right, you would do a var number equals function, one of these guys. Oh, that's great. That shows up too. Fantastic. Okay, I'm back. I disabled. I have to edit the video. I don't want to edit the video. The whole point of these videos is I don't edit them. That's why I'm just talking about random stuff right now, so I don't have to do another video. Okay. So var number function, you do something like this, and then you do like number dot prototype dot. I have no clue what any of the function. Oh yeah, okay. You do something like this equals function whatever, and then you this dot blah blah blah. I don't even think there's a this that you care. Well, how do you get the number out of it? Do you just pass it here? I guess it's here, so you don't need this. So you do that number, and then you'd have a bunch of math here, to figure out how to do toFixed. So that's like one way of polyfilling. Why are we on this topic? Prop types. You can use these, okay? That I'm giving you the opportunity to use them, but please confirm with your team before you do them, because they might not like it. And I'm only assuming they're not going to like it because they've been taught not to like it. I really think that. Now, it kind of like takes away information from your components. Like I said, there are other problems with it. It's not just because they've been taught not to like it. I guarantee you that's the first impression, though. The first impression, you're gonna be like, we should use PropTypes.any. They're gonna be like, you're fired. So the kind of thought that you're gonna have is that you have to explain the pros and the cons. And like I said, the con is that from this component, you don't know what you're supposed to pass here. If you're just relaying props down, if you're just like, here's some props, I'm just gonna pass them down here. The thing is that you wouldn't know what to pass into this component. But this component shouldn't be the one that has to know either. Like, okay, so I could say parent component has like the string, PropTypes.string. And then this component here, child component, it only has any. So it gets the any. That does not work. I absolutely say no. Because this component cares about the actual type of these props. This component did not at the time. It actually doesn't even care about those props at all now. But this is the composition, right? So let's go through, review. I'm not going to control Z it. So this component, if it doesn't care about props, you can use PropTypes.any or PropType.object in the very specific cases where you need it. If it doesn't care about the props, you can use that. Now, again, confirm with people. Please don't just take my word for it. I'm nobody. Well, I don't want to say I'm nobody special, but I mean, I've done React work, so obviously I'm special in some way that I'm some person who has experience with this. So that's one way. Another way is you can tightly couple your components and pull off the prop types, but then remember that memoization is an issue because now you have to do .type.proptypes. So that's another issue. There's also the thing of using context, and context is great, but it gets there are performance issues too. And so you don't want to like add performance issues to your app because you're trying to avoid passing props down from one component to another. And then the last method is composition like this. And then this component absolutely doesn't care about those props or what renders with those props, and so then you can only have to have those props in your child component, which is honestly, this is like the preferred way, but it does not fit every scenario. I can't think of why right now, but in a lot of like cases like component libraries and things like that, this could be a lot more complex to do. You might export it something like this, and actually I would not call it parent component. I'd literally just call it parent at that point, but it'd be like parent and then you do parent on child, like something like that. That could work. This is definitely something that could work, right? And this API is not too bad, but it's just more work for somebody to do than to pass, href and text right on the parent. Although, from a development standpoint, just to be very clear, parent does not care about those props when it's called parent component and it's got this. It didn't care about those props, and that's why PropTypes.any is so important. Is because it can be used in places where your component literally has no care on what the value or type, actually, what the type of those props is. It doesn't care about the value unless it's checking the type, but really what it cares about is the type and not necessarily the value. Yeah, because no component cares about the value. That's why I care that there are children and that they should be rendered here, but I don't really care about the value of children. I wonder if you put undefined here, like if this was undefined, would this break? I don't know. I'd have to check. And I don't want to open a code sandbox and do it. You can do that in your own time. I'm a little curious. I know you can put null here, but I don't know about undefined. I think it would error. That's my guess, but it might not. So it might. Again, you can't do like the only thing you can do is required. So you can do PropTypes.any is required. I'm assuming you can do that. I saw it in here. I saw that you could do it in here. See, you could do that. So a required value of any data type. So you can say, hey, it has to have something. It can't be undefined. I don't know if null counts. That's a good question. Does null count as not required or like not there? It is a value of any data type. Null is a data type, right? Undefined is technically the undefined data type. It's the null in other languages. That's a good question, man. So many questions that I have right now after I did the presentation, literally after I did the whole presentation, not before, where I could have answered these questions and then done the video. Hopefully this was helpful to people. It is extremely long compared to what I expected it to be, but I'm hoping I went through so many different scenarios and so many different things, and you're like, you know what? I should use PropTypes.any. And you know what? I don't care if I get fired from work because they're wrong, right? Oh, man. Yeah. It's up to you how far you want to take it. Your employment has nothing to do with me. I just want to be very clear about that. Nothing to do with me. Go ahead and bring it up as you want. And the whole point of this is like, obviously, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong on this. It matters to bring up the discussion and see what people think, because you want to make sure that people aren't against any because they've heard it's bad. You want to make sure they're against any because they can literally come up with some argument like I did, which is like, oh, maybe this doesn't work in TypeScript, or I have no clue what props are actually supposed to be in my parent component. And we have like 20 billion situations like that in our app. And then I might say like, hey, your app should be built with composition. You're probably doing it wrong. I don't know, right? I have no clue. There's so many different ways to do React apps and so many different applications. I don't know. So I guess that's the whole takeaway, right? The case for PropTypes.any is that I don't know. But it could be used. There's definitely a case for it. All right, see you guys.